Broadcasting live from the moon and back, this is The Coin Chat, the most trusted voice for all things cryptocurrency. Each week we dissect an important issue and cut through the noise and misinformation out there in the world of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and ICOs, capturing the facts that truly matter to you that will give you an edge in this fast-moving emerging market. The who, what, where, when, and how of what you need to know in crypto to get ahead so you don't get left behind. Now here are your co-hosts, financial and crypto experts Yuri Cataldo and Steve Good.
Hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat, and today I am joined by David Atkinson, commercial director over at Holochain. And David, welcome back. It's really cool to have you here again.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be here.
I know today we're not really talking so much about Holochain, although of course a little update would be great. But we're going to talk about something more kind of unique and different, which is, I think, really cool, which is the ICO, STO space, what's happening in that space, doing some comparisons. And you've published a really cool article on Medium, which is what led to this next discussion. So I guess my question is, because you're in Holochain focusing on your own app, what got you interested in comparing ICOs and STOs in the first place?
Yeah, great question. Well, Holochain, we're so community driven, and we had a community driven fundraising process. We didn't take funds from institutions. We didn't have various rounds. We just had the crowd fund for the Holo hardware boxes and then the ICO. And cultivating, nurturing a really strong community is like at the core of how we're trying to work. So We actually called our ICO an initial community offering, not an initial coin offering.
Okay.
That was our term at the time. And over time, many people have come to me and asked for help with their token designs. And I love to help people. So in my spare time, I would just sit down and have a chat.
Yep.
And this is where two things are sort of two parallel streams are apparent at the same time. So the first is Holochain itself has no currency, because we believe at the protocol layer, you shouldn't put a currency. We have crypto accounting instead. Our currency sits at the application layer, which is Holo, the distributed hosting business, and Holo Fuel, the dynamic supply currency. We've got quite a different pattern or design for Holo Fuel currency than most of the tokens out there.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I talk to people on what kind of currency are you trying to build, I speak to a lot of people who come from the business world and are trying to move into the blockchain or the crypto world. And I don't quite get this token thing. Like, I get blockchain, but I don't quite get this token thing. And so they start to talk to me about it. And really what we get to the heart is something feels wrong and they don't quite know what it is. But the reason this is important for Holochain is because in the crypto world, most people were using tokens to fundraise. So as we're thinking about growing the Holochain ecosystem, one of the major reasons for me from a Holochain perspective is to spend time with all of these different businesses, is to understand what are the fundraising mechanisms of the future going to be. So I think we're going to have some interesting conversations on STOs, IEOs, and other things.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like the landscape is just changing far too quickly to keep up with. I mean, if you had asked me last year in May, I thought, oh yeah, IEO has got to be the future here because it makes sense. And then you discover that there's a number of exchanges that say they won't do IEOs, and you're asking, well, why not? And it's because of U.S. regulation, because it's seen as public fundraising. Okay, we just briefly paused because we had a fire alarm, but it was a false alarm, so that's cool. So, so what I was saying was that I noticed the kind of trend that IEOs made sense, but then I noticed that, with the U.S. particular, fundraising is a regulated activity, and so there was a shying away from it. And I think there was a lot of uncertainty around whether IEOs would work or not. And then, of course, dare I say, they seem to be the only place they were happening was in Russia, which is not very regulated. And actually, they weren't really doing anything. And then all of a sudden, we noticed that Binance has jumped into it, and they've decided to launch Launchpad. And that's just spawned into a whole series of other things now with other IEO platforms on major exchanges. But again, all in Asia, which is rather fascinating. I know we're probably jumping ahead from your 10-point stuff that I really want to get into, but I can park that and just say there's definitely a whole theme of IEO stuff going on, which fascinates me. some of which I get involved with from the standpoint of advising clients. But I mean, it's it's really like this whole landscape is just shifting and evolving so quickly. It's just amazing.
Yep. Yeah. It's the mechanisms are, but the fundamental questions that you have to ask aren't. And the key for me is for any business making sure your fundamentals are matching the channel or the mechanism you're using to raise money.
Right.
And all I want to see is successful businesses.
Yeah.
And you generally have to get the combination right.
Yeah. So now you've got 10 points. I'm not sure if we'll make all 10 points in a single episode. If we get to the first 5, maybe we'll stop at 5 and then we'll pause it and do another 5 and make 2 episodes for everybody, because it's probably a lot of stuff that we're going to cover here and it might be quite a long discussion. So let's start and see how we get on. But I mean, I'm really curious to hear what your 10 points are. So do you want to start with the first one about your comparison of ICO versus STO? And let's just go through them and have a hearty debate about what's going on in the space.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so as I said, there's kind of a general conversation that I have with people, which is, I really want my token to work. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, I need to make my investors a lot of money. It needs to go up a lot.
Yeah.
It needs to go up a whole lot. And it needs to cost me nothing.
Yep.
So that's always a really good starting point. And then ideally the conversation is like, and also I'm really experienced. I've run great businesses before, and I really don't quite get how these things work because nothing's ever been free before.
Right.
And yet this looks like it's free. It's kind of too good to be true, but I want to give it a go. And so the first part of my question is really like, okay, are you struggling with your token economics? And the framework for them being able to ask a question is really like, if you are, you're trying to build a currency. If you're not struggling, you're trying to issue digital equity.
Yep.
So a security token is easy to design from a currency perspective. What's hard is to get the regulation right, the legals, the nature of the asset, the technology, and all of those kind of things.
Correct.
So already, if you're not struggling with your token economics, you're not trying to build, you're really trying to build a security. That's one, and there's absolutely nothing wrong. Most businesses are perfectly suited and primarily suited to some kind of security coin as a mechanism to raise funds. Because most businesses' design isn't to capture network effects.
No, it's funny you say this because I've seen more projects that are determining their future business direction based on the price of the cryptocurrency market. And I'm saying to them, you are so confused about what you're doing if that's what you're thinking. Yep. And there's even a project here in Bristol, outside of London, of course, but that shut down. And their public reason for shutting it down was volatility of the coin, because ultimately money was coming in that they would have to then convert back to run their business in dollar or pound or whatever. And I read this and I said, this is absolutely 100% wrong what you've written here, but what a shame that that's the reason you've determined not to continue your project, because you've been looking at the market rather than focusing on your business. Because yes, you have a tokenomic model, and yes, you need your business to run with the token, but no, you should not be looking at the price of the token. Maybe you need to be worried about liquidity, but then again, you don't have to use the token utility for everything. If you're so dependent on dollars, you can also run your platform on dollars, but use a blockchain infrastructure to run your business, and you can separate them too, and the utility can come later. It's not a requirement to be now. But yeah, to your point, a lot of people get so caught up on the function of the coin and the value and the price going up instead of worrying about the business itself. And that always gets me a bit frustrated, because there are ways to change the tokenomic models to make it work without people having to constantly look at the price.
Absolutely. As it's something that there's infinite detail really you can go into in this mechanism, but you're 100% right. And the best way to handle this is, again, the first consideration set is if that's going to be a concern, then you design a security or you design a coin that doesn't impact the fundamentals of your business.
Yeah.
There are very few businesses that are network-based, community-driven, probably community-owned businesses And they are the kind of businesses that benefit most from creating a cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
The rest can be payment coins and all sorts of things. Brilliant and very useful. And any other business that struggles with that problem, the first thing is thinking about security. So yeah, the 10-step process is a way of drawing out businesses that have designed coins or community coins when they really should have just issued equity.
Yeah. So do you want to start with the first of your 10 points and we just sort of go through them one by one? Because I'm really curious to hear what they are. And
sure. Well, the first thing
for
is
those of you who are listening on Spotify or the podcast channels, of course, we're reading them out so you can hear them. But we will put a link to the Medium article down below in YouTube and also on a blog in our website for people to check it out.
So yeah, the first question, as I described, was, are you struggling with your token economics? Firstly, is this an issue for you pre-fundraising or post-fundraising?
Okay. Are you struggling with, okay, right. So in that particular context, this is more about, do you have a tokenomics model that does anything? Or if you don't, then maybe it's just a security because it's just a token for raising funds. Is that the point of the question?
The point of that question is to be able to find someone. It's actually an emotional question to start with, because you're trying to find like what concerns you about the business that you're running. And in general, the token economics causes a lot of stress for people.
It certainly does. Yeah.
Because they've designed something that they don't fully understand. They don't fully know the consideration set or the choices. And what happens is those choices are actually quite simple and fundamental, and yet what we get is brilliant mathematicians creating massive complexity on the base of a simple choice that makes it look like there are 50 token models or 100 token models, or a token is very complicated. But the implementation of a token can be very complicated, the nuances can be complicated, but the fundamental choices are simple, and people don't have access or a way of understanding those fundamental choices, so they get confused and it just feels wrong.
Right.
And I think the first step of change is always that acknowledgement that something isn't working. So my first question is always, well, it's actually generally a listening, and this is the question in my head. And eventually I just say, so it seems like you're really struggling with your tokenomics.
Yeah, so just read the question again so for those listening can hear again what the question was.
The question is, are you struggling with your token economics?
Okay.
And so in my head, what happens is, if the answer is no, either they've got a brilliantly designed coin,
yep,
or they have designed a security,
right,
realizing it or not, and right.
Or they've not struggled because they've made the mistake of issuing dividends on the coin or issuing some form of payouts or guaranteed payouts on the coin. And by the way, people, if they're doing that, it's a security. Or it's certainly most likely to be, because giving out dividends is certainly falling into the lines of being tied to an asset of the company. Of course, we could get into the whole Howey testing in more detail, but I know that it's a big factor that if you're going to start paying people based on the value of the actual company and the underlying value of the way the company runs, then you have to consider that dividends, payouts, guaranteed payouts, by the way, stay away, because nobody can guarantee anything in this life. So separate, I've gone off topic a little here, but yeah, so that's a really good point though about the tokenomics for businesses and how they're setting up.
Exactly. I love the point. And the reason it's such a crucial question, especially like coming from Holochain, distributed application framework with no currency, but say Holochain in this sense could be similar to an Ethereum and other like protocol-based platforms. Any platform wants to see an ecosystem built on top of it. And so that a platform that wants an ecosystem in general wants people to use the currency on that platform. And that makes a lot of sense, because you don't need, if you have 1,000 applications running on your platform, you don't need 1,000 different currencies.
No.
So trying to get a clarity around what constitutes good token design connected to how do crypto projects that don't fundraise through tokens fundraise is so important for building a vibrant ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.